Hey everyone, so today we're going to look at major scales, learning how to understand and write major scales for every major scale that there is in Western music. Now, major scales are extremely important because all our theory is going to come and span from major scales. So once you understand how a major scale works, you'll be able to understand everything from chords, scales. We're all going to link it back to major scales, so make sure that you understand this video. Alright, here we go. So when we listen to music, we're really listening to three different things that's going on. We're hearing the different rhythms between all the instruments. We're hearing the interval difference between the melodies, notes, chords, and scales. Now when I say the interval difference, I mean the distance between the low notes and the high notes that's constantly going on. What's that distance? So that's all made up of intervals, and then we're looking at the different timbre of all the instruments as well. Every instrument's going to have a different timbre, and I guess you can talk about the different feel as well that you're going to hear. Some music might have a different feel than others, and some might have more as well. But these are the three things that you look at when you talk about discussing music. Now today we're looking at learning the major scale, and specifically we're learning the interval difference in the major scale and how you create a major scale. Here we go. So the easiest way for us to break down music is into intervals, and the easiest way to break that down even further is to break down intervals into tones and semitones. Now we're going to be looking at intervals a lot more further on, but to begin with, let's look at it in its most basic form. We're looking at tones and semitones. So when we're looking at different chords and scales, it all comes back to a series of different tones and semitones. So when we look at the major scale today, this is the order of tones and semitones you need to build a major scale. So what we're doing is we're starting on a particular note, and then we're building up higher, and we're going up in pitch using this series of tones and semitones. Now the series of tones and semitones is tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. That's the order there, and whatever note you start on, if you keep moving up using this series of tones and semitones, you'll reach an octave, and that's a major scale. All those notes starting on the beginning note and moving up an octave using that series of tones and semitones. So what we're doing here is we're creating our first major scale. Now remember, we've already talked about tones and semitones and the difference. So a tone is basically 2 frets away, or 2 semitones from the initial note that you started on, and a semitone is simply 1 step higher or lower in pitch. So for example, a semitone up from C, if we're starting on C because we're building a C major scale, is going to be C sharp. Whereas a tone away from C, or 2 steps or 2 semitones up from C, is going to be D. 1, 2. So let's begin that way, alright? So our first note, because we're creating a C major scale, is going to be C. Okay, that's the first degree of our scale. Now we're going to move up a tone, so we're going to move up 2 steps up from C. So there's C. 1 step up is going to be C sharp, but we want 2, so we're going to go up to D. So D is a tone away, or 2 steps away from C. Now that we've done the first and second degrees, we're going to need to move up a tone higher. So 2 steps away from D is 1 step. 2 step is going to be E. Great, so now we have the first, second, and third degrees of our C major scale. Now we need to move up a semitone, or a single step or a single fret up from E. And a single step up from E is going to be F. Now we've got the 1, 2, 3, and 4th scale degrees. Now we're going to move up from F, and we're going to move up a tone. So 2 steps away from F, F sharp, G. 2 steps away is going to be G. Now from G, we're going to move up another tone, or 2 steps. So 1 step would be G sharp, and another step is going to be A. So we're going to move up to A. Now that we're on A, we're almost done. We're going to move up to the 7th degree of the scale, and we're going to move up another tone, or 2 steps. So from A, 1, 2, now we're going to be on a B note, and that's our 7th degree. And we're almost done. Now that we're on the 7th degree, B, we simply move up a semitone, or a single step, or a single fret, or single key, and we're going to move up from B back to our starting note, but it's going to be an octave higher, than how we began, we're going to move up to C. And that's it. That's how you make a major scale. Specifically, we're looking at the C major scale, but you just take this order of tones and semitones and apply it to any letter name, and you'll get that appropriate corresponding major scale. So for example, if we wanted a D major scale, all we would do is we would start with a D, we would move up a tone, semitone, and follow through until we get an octave higher in pitch to a D. And that's it. That's all you need to do to create a major scale. So now what we're going to do is we've written out this C major scale, but there's one final step that's really, really important, okay? We've written up the major scale, but it's really important to remember not only the tones and semitones, but the different scale degrees. Now I'll explain why, but first let's write up the scale degrees. Now we've drawn up the scale degrees there, including a very boxy 6. Now the reason why those scale degrees are so important is because all of our theory knowledge is going to expand and build upon this idea of major scales, this series of tones and semitones, okay? So as I was explaining and choosing the different letter names for the different degrees, it's really, really important that you think about the different degrees, because when we learn different chords, triads, different scales even, we're going to come back to this major scale and we're going to alter these different degrees. All we're going to do is we're going to flatten, sharpen, or even leave out. So it's really important that when you're practicing this, write up a major scale using the tones and semitones, put the tones between the two notes so you remember that B is a tone up from A, or that F is a semitone up from E, or vice versa. But once you've written up that major scale, make sure you write up numbers, or the scale degree numbers, up above those letter names, okay? It's really important. So it's a really good visual representation, because if you have a look really quickly, we've started on the first degree, C, and we've moved up 8 notes higher to get to the octave. So 8 is the octave up to the higher C, higher in pitch. So that's it for today's lesson. So we've learned how to create a major scale using tones and semitones. Anyone can do it. It really is that simple. But make sure that you understand how to do this, because all of our theory knowledge and how to apply it to the actual instrument itself is going to build upon major scales. If this is still a bit fuzzy and not setting quite in, have a look at this other video that I've made, because it goes in greater detail again. But otherwise, that's it. So thanks for watching, and see you guys again.